What I'd like to do is do an overview of the entire Recover Wholeness. What is this about? You know, the whole, just an overview of the entire thing and why it's practical and why it's helping and how we believe it will help, okay? So, little history of Recover Wholeness. We're kind of new and we're pretty unique. There's some unique things about what we talk about, what we teach, and what we do in terms of dealing with addictive behavior. We started talking about doing some meetings, having our own meetings, recovery, all that kind of thing. And Kent asked me to step forward and kind of put together a curriculum. I'll tell you a little bit more about me in just a little bit and why he would ask me to do that. But we started in about May, kind of researching, do we want to do this? Do we think we can do this? What do we think we would do if we did do this? So by June, we kind of came up with a plan, and in June, we started having meetings. And the plan was that eventually we would have an outpatient program because there aren't very many outpatient programs around here, and we were actually encouraged by Judge Deborah Jones to start a program that she could begin to refer people to, and as well some of the other judges in the area. And so we decided to do that, and in September we got our first participant. We call the people we don't really call it outpatient. I'll use that term sometimes because that's the term that everybody kind of identifies with. We call it non-resident. That means they aren't living here, but you aren't really patients. These aren't patients. We don't see it that way. They're just participating in a program of helping to overcome addictive behavior. And we don't put a lot of emphasis on drug and alcohol because we really don't believe that's the problem. It's part of the problem for sure, but it's not the problem. A lot of things that we don't know about addiction that we should know because the research has been out there for years and years and years, decades. There's a lot of things we think we know about addiction that isn't true. It doesn't work. And the truth is, in our culture today, there's a lot of rehabs and a lot of people doing a lot of things, and it just didn't make much of a difference, unfortunately. And it's not because we aren't trying. I'm not putting anybody down because it's not because we aren't putting effort forward and trying to make it happen, but it just isn't changing much. And we wanted to see if we could find something that really matched with the studies. It matched with studies that have been done about addiction and how to overcome it. And the people who have followed those prescriptions have really been able to move forward. And so we did a lot of research, and that's kind of what I enjoy doing is researching things, finding out information, putting it together. There have been some really cool life changes that have come about. Caleb's standing up here with me because he's going to help me out a little bit because Caleb and I really kind of started this together well over a year ago. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I wanted to introduce you to somebody who was our very first participant in Recover Wholeness, Rita Ziegler. Can you come up, Rita?
Go, Rita.
Welcome, Rita. Rita, I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about her story, but she was our very first participant.
I had a car accident, and I flipped my car in a ravine, and by the time that they had got me to the hospital, I was having seizures, and so they immediately started, like, pushing phenobarbital, triliptal, tegretol, dilantin, Xanaxes, Ativan, through it all at one time in my IV, and I was in the hospital for about a month, and then they told my husband, poor thing, if you don't give her this medication at home, she'll die. And so he didn't know any different. So I went home with 26 different kinds of meds, and I was on them until 2011. I was catatonic pretty much for several years. And then I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, high as a kite, with someone I shouldn't have been with, and ended up in Tutwiler. I'm sorry.
Okay. Tell us how it's helping you.
That's not really a place you want to be. There are some people here that have been there, and it's a really hard place. And it doesn't really have a lot of structure. And if you want to read your Bible, it's really a hard place to read, or to believe in God, or to have anything in your life except for bad language, and you have to defend yourself to the max. And I'm 53 years old, so, you know, I was a little scared, but I grew up with 14 boys, so I got over that real fast. But when I got out, I filed a motion to Deborah Jones to see if I could come home, and one of the stipulations, I guess, was this program. And I thought, oh, yay, I get to go to church. You know, that's kind of all I thought about. But when I got here, they just started the program, and immediately I was given a life coach. She has been my backbone, seriously. Her name is Kathy Ogden, and she is the best coach ever. Kathy got me on a path where there was structure, okay? So, like, there's communication every single morning. There's inspiration every morning, and then there's meditation every morning. I love the meditation. This program, everything that he talks about to me, but it's because I grew up in a church all my life. I know how to connect with spirit. I know that I'm a spirit. So what they talk about in this class, if you really listen and apply it to your life, I promise you I'm so much better in 7 months than I was. I was a wreck when I got here. I was scared of everything. I know you can't see it, but I have an ankle monitor on, and I have to carry, you know, its little buddy with it. And I really do just, I hate it. I mean, I don't hate many things in life. I don't even like the word, but I do, you know. This program has given me a reason to have courage, a reason to stand up and say, yes, going to prison took away everything I worked hard for all my life. It took away my self-respect, my self-esteem. It took away my reputation that I have built. I'm the liaison for the state of Alabama for the American Indian movement. I was embarrassed about even going out and continuing that. But when I come here, there's a structure for me. And that structure is, it is important for me to have contact with Kathy every day. It's important for me to have contact with Mayor. It really helps when you know that even though you have a bunch of family, they can't help you like someone who doesn't know you can help you. But when they get to know you, like I've gotten to know them, I mean, they're like my family now, and I love this program. I love it, and I recommend it to anybody and everybody. And if you're not structured in the program, please get in it, because I'm a recovering addict. I mean, that's the way they say it. I mean, I was addicted to the prescription medications. It wasn't street drugs, but it was still drugs. And now I mean, don't you feel like I'm
Yes, ma'am.
I'm a long way than I was, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Your hand.
Isn't that awesome? Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, Rita is coming a long way, and now Shea, her husband, is now serving as a coach, and doing a great job, and Rita is speaking to others and sharing with them and encouraging them, and she's just grown tremendously. You know, we don't talk too much about being clean. I know that's an incredible thing, and I don't want to downplay it at all, because it is an incredible thing to be clean. But you know what Jesus said to his disciples? you are already clean. Because of the words that I spoke to you, you're already clean. And one of the things that I don't want to put any program down, and I don't want to put anything down. But sometimes, by virtue of me trying to point out that we have some things wrong, it's going to seem like that. Okay. And so, 12-step is great. Some of the things we do with that and the things that are said, the men who started AA or 12-step, incredible people. But, part of 12-step is that it's one day at a time, right? It's just one day at a time. So why do we count? So you get 2 years down the road and you get your 2-year chip. And on day 2 of year 2, you slip. And guess where you go? Back to day 1. And a lot of people, because of that, they binge. Because, after all, now I'm not clean. What? I thought it was just one day at a time, one moment at a time. Because the moment you woke up and realized you weren't clean, you were clean. Yeah. That's the way it works. That's encouragement. That's life, okay? There are slip-ups. And after all, didn't it say that relapse was part of recovery? But nobody's allowed to relapse. So when you relapse, and I'm not saying you should, you know better than that. When I say this kind of stuff, there are people who are going to say, well, Mayor, you're just saying just go do whatever you want to do. It doesn't matter if you relapse, just use drugs if you want to use them, whatever. And I am kind of saying that, but not really. What I'm really saying is I believe you got enough sense to know what I'm saying. I believe you got enough sense to know what I'm talking about. All right? You do. You're smart people. But you know how you're treated, though. Right? That you're dumb. You're an idiot. And you're lazy. That's your problem. You're lazy and you're stupid. And yet, you got a better hustle going on than anybody else. You're smart as a whip. And you're not lazy. You worked hard to keep that thing going. Did you not? Every single day. It's the same energy. It's the same motivation. It's just switching it to a different side, isn't it? Yeah, you're smart. You're a hard worker. That's not what that's about, right? And you're not, I don't know, there's this thing, about hitting bottom. But, somebody told me today, I don't know if I read this before. I've read the book and watched the movie, but I haven't gone to AA a whole lot, so I'm not hugely familiar with it. But it says somewhere in there that you got to hit the bottom first, but it says that we raise the bottom. But for some reason, when you go to rehab or you go to jail, they're trying to get you as far to the bottom as they can get you. And they're dehumanizing you and beating you down and calling you this. And just, there's no respect for somebody who's having an issue and a problem, right? And I know drugs are illegal, but you're not a criminal. This is a problem. This becomes a disease. Now, we have the research to show us that all this is true, and we just keep looking over it. He just says, there was a study where they took this rat, right, and put it in a cage. You've heard about this, right? They put a rat in a cage, and they take 2 vials right there, and one of the vials is laced with heroin of water, vials of water. One's laced with heroin, and one's just pure water. They put this rat in there, and they let that rat choose between the two, and it finally finds the heroin, and it keeps hitting that thing until it's dead. Right? And so they concluded by that the problem is the drug. The heroin has this hook in it, and the moment you use it, you're hooked, right? It's over, all right? Or whatever the opiate is or whatever the drug is. So this other guy, and this happened in the 70s, This study happened in the 70s. This other guy decides, this behavioralist, he decides, hey, I want to try this out a different way. I want to see if that's really what the problem is. So he takes a bigger cage. He puts some wheels in it, some different kinds of food. He puts female rats and male rats together so that they can have some fun and all this kind of stuff in there. And they do the same thing. They put one vial of water and one vial of water laced with heroin. And those rats, not all of them, but some of the rats hit the heroin and never went back. Went back to the water. Didn't like it. Now, what's the difference in those two studies? The cage. Not the drug, the cage. And that's what we talk about in here is, you know, these 5 areas we're going to talk about in just a second are all about building a better cage. And when you get a better cage around you, you won't want that stuff. And you won't have to keep your own desire at bay. Because if that's what you think recovery is just being able to keep my desire at bay, baby, you're still bound. You're free from the drugs, perhaps, but you're still bound. Okay? You see that? You're not free. Well, what we want is you to completely be free. And that's where the activity, the behavior happens naturally. Okay? And I learned a lot of just kind of observing and listening. And when I was in ministry, I talked to a lot of people, especially once we had Celebrate Recovery. I talked to a lot of people and listened to them. But, you know, I was a very religious person myself. And it really made me kind of a judgmental prick because I really saw myself as superior to everybody else because I didn't have that problem. And although I really cared about all of those folks, I really did, but they were like those folks, right? Those people. And in that particular church, the Celebrate Recovery people were separate from the church people. Celebrate Recovery met on Friday night, and, you know, they didn't come on Sunday because Sunday they wouldn't have been really welcomed all that much. Some of them did. There were some of the rehabs that came, but it was still, you know, like those people sit in that section. You know, we're the other people. And it was kind of divided, you know, and there were even people who said, you know, that's bad news. We don't need to be in that business, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't one of those people, but I did certainly see myself as better. You see, I was told that if you lived a really holy life, and you did all the things right, that you'd be close to God. And you'd be closer to God. And so I did all that because I wanted to be closer to God. I really did. It was my heart's desire to be close to God, to know God. My grandfather was my pastor, and he was really close to God. And I wanted that. I wanted to be close to God. So that's what I was told, is if you'll just live this holy life, you'll do that. Until one day a meth addict that I was working with walks into my office, and he was about 2 or 3 days clean, and but he was nasty. He and his wife had been living in an abandoned home, squatting there, but he'd gotten clean miraculously. He just stopped. And he came to my office, and he's talking about what God had done for him. And honest to God, the glory of God was all over him. Absolutely. It was all over him, and it pissed me off. It pissed me off to no end. Because after all, hey, wait a minute. The way it works is you're holy like I am. And then you get the glory on you. You don't just use meth and quit for 3 days and you get the glory on you. But I knew what the glory looked like, and I knew he had it. He had it on him. I mean, it was thick. He was snotting all over my desk. You know, it was just bad. He stunk, but he had the glory of God all stinking over him. I knew it. I could see it, and it made me so mad. And there's actually a story in the Bible where this same thing happened. It was where, you know, there's this prodigal son. He goes away and squanders his inheritance, and then he comes back, and the father just welcomes him back. He didn't make him do anything. He didn't make him repent. He didn't ask him if he was sorry for his sin. He just took him back, killed a fatted calf, put a ring on his finger, robe on his back, threw a party. The whole community's having a party. And the older brother, who had been there all the time and had done everything the father told him to do, he won't go to that party. So the father comes out and says, hey, come on into the party. Father, I have been here with you all this time, and you've never thrown a party for me. My brother goes out and squanders your inheritance and lives like a hellion, and you bring him back in and throw a party. And you know what the father said? Son, everything I have has always been yours. You see the difference? That was me. I'm the older brother in that story because I didn't do all those things. And this is the younger brother. And some of you are the younger brothers. And some of us in the room are older brothers. Okay? But we're in the same family.
Come on.
Okay? So that woke me up that day. And I began to see things differently. Well, later down the road, I began to deal with people one-on-one, just sharing. And God was doing some things in me. What you don't know about me, I'll go to me just real quickly. If you got to go.
No.
Okay. I've dealt with depression all my life. I have been in church all my life. My mom, who has Alzheimer's today, and I take care of her. She's in a nursing home now, but I care for her. My mom probably was schizophrenic. She's been diagnosed with schizophrenia now. Bipolar. She dealt with depression. I don't know. I've always dealt with that too. And I have days, and some of you will identify what I'm going to say. There are days you wake up, and it's just heavy. And when I was in my 20s, I thought about suicide a lot. And I was a minister in a church in my 20s. I started ministering in church when I was 16, leading choirs and leading worship. And I'm leading worship, and I'm happy, and everything's going great, and God's great, and we should celebrate, and we're doing all great songs, and man, I'm singing my heart out, and nobody knows that I'm thinking about ending it. And I kept telling myself, you can't do that, you go to hell. Not true. You should know that. If you want to know why, you can come to me later, but not true. But I believed it at the time, or I wasn't sure. Maybe I thought I was, but one night, when my wife and I were having some troubles, and I'd made a bunch of mistakes. I wasn't a good father. I wasn't a good husband. And I really, really had a lot of negative self-talk and really intrusive thoughts. And I got up out of the bed, left my wife in the bed, and my children, stood at the door, prayed a few prayers, and I went to the railroad tracks in Mobile, Alabama. And I parked my truck, right at the railroad tracks. And there was a Amtrak that always came through at midnight on this particular track. And that Amtrak train ran about 45 miles an hour. And it was a long train, too. I stopped at a place I knew where there wasn't a guardrail. And I put one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake in gear. And I waited. And I could see the light from a long way out. And I waited and I watched it. And I knew that the moment I went out in front of that thing, I'd never know it again. I'd seen people be hit right there a few times since I'd lived there. And I sat there and waited. And I had every intention of doing it. And some of you have been there. And I waited and I waited and waited, and it was almost to me. And I started pressing on the gas and holding the brake. You could hear the engine just revving up. All I had to do was release the brake, and in a second, I'd be right in front of it. And I waited and waited, and it was almost there. And as it got closer and closer, I started to weep. And I started to feel life start flowing in me again. And I held off, obviously.
Thank God.
And I put it in park, and I cried my eyes out. One part of me was just incredibly mad because I couldn't do it. And the other part was like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And I fought that kind of thing for a lot of years. And what it did was it made me very, very angry. And I started trying to coach my little boy in basketball and baseball when he was little. And I had little people in Gadsden know about this, and they think I'm all nuts. But that's part of the reason I changed my name. But I used to coach these boys, and I would get incredibly angry, and I would shout at them, and I would shout at the refs, and I was just an absolute jackass.
Jack off.
And I was in the ministry. I was a pastor. I was hard on my children. I was hard on my wife. And there were times when I went home and the frustration was so high, I would break everything in the room. I put my fist through doors. I put my fist through sheetrock. I've broken mirrors, all that kind of stuff. And I was in the ministry. And that's what made it worse, because I could tell no one that I was dying. But one day, I happened up on some of this stuff. I had questions about God. Questions I knew I couldn't ask anybody else, and nobody would deal with it. Nobody talk about it, because you don't do that in church. You toe the line. Whatever they're telling you, you flow with that, right? And if you go outside that, you're not one of us anymore, right? You're a heretic. There were days when I woke up because of depression, I didn't know if God existed at all. I'd wake up sometimes and I'd say, there's no Jesus. This is all just a fake. I'm playing a game. And there were other days when I'd wake up and I'd just be like, glory to God. This is, I'd be like that. It's manic, right? One way, one day another, all right? So, but when I got here to Word Alive in 2008, I found a place that would allow me to be me and allow me to ask questions and to ponder and to research and look into things that if anybody had caught me looking into those things or reading those particular books or thinking a certain way, they would have thrown me out, ostracized me. My career would have been over. Labeled a heretic, and I'm pretty much that already now. But I'm in good company, because I don't know if you know about a guy named Martin Luther or not. Martin Luther, some of you may know that, some of you don't. But Martin Luther was this guy way back several hundred years ago, and he caused the Protestant movement to come out of the Catholic movement, right? Some of you, maybe you studied this in history, and some people are lost, some people are there. But anyway, great guy, Martin Luther. Not Martin Luther King Jr., but Martin Luther, named after him. And when he was standing before the Pope in the Inquisition, and they were about to have him burned at the stake, and the Pope declared him a heretic, he said this. He said, I can never be a heretic, because I will never decide anything finally. He was like me. He was researching and finding out that some of the things that the church was telling people, they were telling them just to keep them under control. That back then they told them common people can't read the Bible because they'll go crazy. Only the clergy, only those who really know how to read it can read it, right? And that kept them under control, kept them suppressed, right? So anyway, I get to Word Alive, and I got a place where I can let go. I got a place where I can start to just be me. And Kent Maddox saved my life, because if I hadn't have come here, I'd have been done with ministry. I'd have been out of church altogether. I'd been doing something else, bartending or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if I could do that. But doing something, maybe doing the pole thing. I don't know. But I could be good at that. Come on. But he saved my life. He really did. And so when Caleb and I connected, I spent 3 years in downtown in the inner city of Gadsden, Alabama, doing a mission work for Word Alive. And there I got introduced to homelessness, mental illness. We opened up a rehab house called Freedom House and had guys in there. And I got a chance to kind of try out some of the things that had actually set me free from all the anger, the depression. I do have bouts of depression. I still do. But I know a way out. I have something here that shakes me to the core, and I find that part of myself that is really me. And I'm able to look at my own mind and go, it's going to be okay. Because I'm not that thinker. I'm not depressed. I'm experiencing depression. You see the difference? And look at my own body and recognize what my body's doing. So I began to learn these 5 things. I didn't know there were really 5 things at that time. Even when Caleb and I started, I didn't know there were these 5 things. It was more like all these things I had learned. about God, about the way this actually works. And what I was discovering, and Kent was also helping me to discover, he and I talked a lot about this, is that there are a lot of things that we have heard in the church that just aren't true. They just aren't true. They don't help us. They hurt us. They bind us down. And Jesus was teaching something different to set us free. So Caleb and I start talking and spending time together, and I got him. He's mine, right?
He was my coach. 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Every day.
Every day. We made contact with each other every day. We either text or we called. I would text him, and I got him started on meditation. Yes. All these things I knew had saved my life, I'm sharing with him. And so we're meditating. We're having inspiration. He's got a morning routine. That's what Rita was talking about, a morning routine, a structure. Because routine builds momentum. It puts momentum into your life. It's like when you were on the playground. Remember we used to play on the playground, especially guys, and we put all the girls on the merry-go-round, and we try to spin it as fast as we could spin it, right, and get them all sick. Well, you know, when you're 10 years old and you're trying to push that thing, it's really hard to push in the beginning. It's like, but once you get it going, then it's kind of like, right? You're just tapping it and it keeps going. That's what routine does for your life. Once you get in the routine of moving, that routine moves on its own. Its own weight starts to move it for you, okay? Yeah. So you get up every morning, the first thing, go ahead.
So at first I was supposed to call him at 7 every morning. And there were days I did not want to.
There were a lot of days to begin with.
A lot of days. But once I started calling him every day, or fought through not wanting to call him and called him, it's like something broke instantly. And I was able to get into my structure, into my meditation, into my daily routine, and that's when the momentum started.
Yeah, and now you feel it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
It's like it's living you now.
Same momentum, it is living me.
Yeah, I learned some time ago, you've heard me say this before, I most of my life I tried to live for God. I did. I tried with all my heart to live for God. And then what happened to me is I realized I couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. There was no way. I wasn't going to succeed at it. And I gave up. And then God started living me.
Come on.
He just lives me. And that's what happens is you begin to get this routine, and meditation is powerful.
It's key.
We are learning more and more about this lost art. And the church keeps saying that's new age, that's new age, that's new age. You don't need to do that. You'll get demons, all this kind of stuff. And I don't know why we keep saying that. Because over and over the studies show that those people who meditate are finding peace. Their brains are being healed. Their brains are changing. You know, drug use changes your brain. That's why we call it a disease. Now, people say that addiction is a choice. It is a choice. Back yonder, when you were first starting, that was when the choice was. But after it gets you, you're not choosing. You're not making a decision. You know you're not. You're not making those decisions. They're being made for you because of the addiction. It's taking over. Because your brain, its purpose is to automate things in life so that it makes life easier. That's what it's supposed to do. So what it does is it looks for patterns in life, things you do over and over, and it automates it. It's like I get in my truck sometimes to drive home. I got about a 35-mile drive to get back to Gadsden. I get in my truck sometimes, and I get in it up here in the parking lot, and I put it in gear, and I start driving. I may remember going down Allendale and getting on the 202, and then I'm pulling in my driveway. You ever done that? And you go, oh, my goodness. I know I drove from there to here, but I have no memory of it. Why? Because your brain puts it in autopilot, and it'll do it all on its own. Knows what to watch for, knows what to do, and it gets you there. Well, drug addiction is the same way. Your brain's just automated it. So how are we going to break it? We got to break it down into pieces. So this cat, we started doing drug tests every week.
Every week.
Sometimes twice a week.
Yep.
There was eventually that moment when Caleb would come to me and say, I want to use. Yep. You remember the day you came to me and said, I'm thinking about using. And I said, well, let's go get some.
Right. For sure.
Remember that's what I said?
Yep.
I said, where do you get it?
Yep.
and he was like,
Is this a trick?
yeah, he thought, what? I said, really? Yeah. But then you said, I don't want to.
No, I really don't. I know what I want.
And do you know why that happened, right?
Because I knew what I wanted.
He knew what he wanted, and that didn't fit the equation. But it also shook him out of resistance.
Yeah, there was no resistance. And the structure.
Right.
The fences.
Yeah, because that moment of the craving was a moment of resistance. He was like, I can't go. Help me. He's jonesing, right? I can't. He's breathing fast. His heart rate was up, right? He's sweating. And he comes to my office, which was a great step. That was an incredible breakthrough, right? That he came to me to say, I'm thinking about using, right? And I just said, well, let's go get some. If that's what you want, let's go get some. No resistance. It just like shook it off. And then it was like, no, I don't think I do want to do that. That sounds crazy.
Yeah, it does sound
crazy. It is crazy.
It is crazy.
Why would you do that? You got a child at home, a beautiful child. You got a beautiful wife. You got this incredible opportunity here to work with your family, to follow in the footsteps of your father, right? We would talk about the things he wanted. Yes. Tell us the things that you wanted. Remember what they were?
I wanted to be a good father. I made me cry. I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to be a good husband. I wanted to be. I wanted to follow the Lord with all my heart, and I wanted to have fixable problems. Because at this point, my problems in my mind weren't fixable. I couldn't be fixed. I was done.
I had actually heard people say, I'll try to clean up my language, okay? But I'd actually heard people say, he's an F up. Yep. He had been around here as a boy and as a young man working around here and using. Right. And we all loved him, and we all knew he was using. Yep. And we knew he was struggling. And he's trying to make it. And I always just felt, we would always hug each other. Because I always just felt, and my daughter's about his age, and I always felt like, God, if we could, somebody's got to help him. Right. Because I felt like in my heart, I can't say all of it, but there are things in my heart I know in my heart about Caleb. I can't even tell him. Right. They're powerful things. Yeah. His ego doesn't need to hear it.
Right. Because he can definitely get
But they're true. And they're going to come get him. Yeah. Like I tell you, you don't go chasing your destiny. No. Don't go looking for your purpose. It'll come get you.
Meditate on
all right?
it. Wait on it.
Wait upon the Lord. All right? So this idea of meditation and knowing what you want and focusing on what you want instead of what you don't want. Stop focusing on not doing drugs again. This was the one thing I kept trying not to do with him, is not to talk about the drugs.
What I don't want to do.
So we're going along. I want to do just a little bit further with this and we'll wrap up. But we're going along. And from the time we started, I'm testing Caleb. And he would go a while and then he would use. Yep. And when he used, I fired him. When he used, I said that they were right. You're an F up. Right. Nope. I said, you're not clean anymore. Nope. You got to start all over. Nope. You know what I said? Yay! He used. He finally used. This is what I was waiting on.
It's inevitable.
Why? Because it was the moment we could sit and talk about what the ego was doing, what the flesh was doing, bring awareness to what's really going on, because he had no idea.
Yeah, it was not me.
One day he's out here and we're working, everything's going great. Right. And all of a sudden, he's off in the truck going to get meth. Yep. And comes back with it and uses it. And, of course, his wife recognizes it, and she calls me. You got to come test Caleb. we sit down afterwards, and there were several moments like this where we would sit down after he had used and say, okay, let's talk about it. Right. What's going on here? And I would always say, okay, what was happening in your head right before you went to sleep? And the automated took over. Yeah. And we just go back to when was the moment that you actually realized you're asleep? And when was the moment when you woke up? Right. When was the moment? Now, it might have been when somebody caught you, but that's fine. Mm-hmm. When was the moment when you came to yourself, dang, God, that was not what I wanted to do. Right? In that moment, you're awake. Yes, you're aware that this has happened. Yes. And that's the moment to look at it honestly. But you won't do that if you think that was you that did that. You know what you'll do? You'll slip into shame and you'll hide from it. And you'll say, I don't want to remember that. I just want to go on. Or you'll say, well, heck, I've already messed up. Let me get some more. Let me just do it really, really good for a couple of days, and then I'll start over again. After all, I've already messed up. Anybody know what I'm talking about? But when you know, hey, this is the moment I've been waiting on, when the ego would show up and I'd get to see this cat for what it really is. That's not me. When I do the thing I don't want to do, it is not me that does it, Paul says. But it is sin in my flesh, because with my inner man, I delight to do the will of God. And you may say, well, Mayor, that won't work because people will just go do whatever they want to do. Try it. Right. Try it. They won't. That's not how it works. This is what they said to Paul when he said, where sin abounds, grace does much more abound. I'm getting excited now. Yes, good. You know what they said to him? Paul, you're just saying, then we should just go out and sin more so that more grace will come. And he said, why would we do that? Why would you do that? I trust you. I trusted Caleb. I trusted that this would be a moment of moving forward, that it wasn't going backwards. Because the moment he felt like he was going backwards, what do you think his mind was? It won't work that way. Do you understand me? It won't work that way. It doesn't work that way. And the places around the world that are teaching this holistic approach are having incredible success. But the nations that want to continue to punish are going down, down, down. Their prisons are full. Do you realize that the United States has 25% of all the people in the world who are incarcerated? And we only have 5% of the population of the world. Half of those people, actually, 50%, almost 50% of those people are drug users. And yet, no, I'm not going there.
Next time.
Am I passionate about this? Absolutely.
Yes, he is.
Because we got to fix it. But listen, we can't fix it by anger. We can't fix it by hostility. I know I'm shouting, and I shouldn't be. But we can't fix it that way. We fix it by getting well and proving that it works, because it does. And so the 5 things, real quickly, and I'll get you out of here, are awareness. Being aware of what's going on, even when I use. Yes. Not throwing it away. Not saying I'm not clean anymore. Let's stop that. Mm-hmm. You're always clean. Because that's not you. You've never been dirty. Not one day in your life have you ever been dirty. Let's stop that. Stop doing that to one another. That's really good. Stop it. You're not dirty. You're clean. Your Father is God. Mm-hmm. I trust you. I trust what you're going to do with this. Okay? Awareness, knowing yourself, knowing that part of you that isn't you, looking at it, because that's what you are. You're not the doer. You're not the thinker. You're the beer. Spirit, like God. Your Father is God. And then acceptance. There are things that have happened. They happened. It's over, baby. Accept it. It happened. Quit living in the past. Some of you are drinking and doing drugs because you won't let go of it. You won't just let it be what it is. It happened.
You did the best
Okay?
you could at that time.
Yeah. You did all you could do at that time. That's it. And you're better than the worst thing you've ever done.
So true.
You are. Start there. Start looking inside instead of outside. That baby, the change ain't coming from the outside. It's coming from deep inside of you. And it's already there. It was for freedom that we were set free. You are free. You just haven't known it. And then alignment. As we said, find that thing that you want. Do you have problems you can fix?
100%.
Are you a good father?
Yes, I am.
And he's got new goals now.
Yes.
They're turning into new things that I want. Because he's seeing,
Does that have momentum?
yeah, and he's seeing that there is a thing that if I could get that thing, it would give me all those other things for free. I don't have to worry about trying to change my behavior when I know that there's something inside of me that if I tapped into it and I really believed that was me, which it is, that I would get the behavior. That would come. Okay? Alignment. Jesus said where your heart is or where your treasure is, your heart will be. Where's your treasure? And then identity, which is what this was really all about. You're the light of the world. And unity. You're not an island to yourself. We're all connected to each other, and we need each other. And as Johann Hari says, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. It's connection. The more we're connected to one another, the easier we can make it. And our connection to each other is what helped. And then others supported. Others got in and supported and began to believe. Caleb's changing. He's not the guy he used to be. I'd hear it. Mayor, Caleb's not the guy he used to be. He had a smile. He began to function and live life. And now he's running his own department. Come on.
Come on, give it up. Please.
Yeah. We're connected. And I know, look, Mayor is a weird A. He's just weird, okay? He comes up with some of the strangest stuff, you know, and I know it freaks you out. And people, and listen, people say, well, God, that you shouldn't do that because these people are vulnerable. You know, you should really teach the orthodoxy, you know, the things that the church says you should teach. These people are vulnerable. They've had deals with drugs and that kind of thing. Let me tell you something. You know what you're most vulnerable to? Is somebody coming to you telling you they have the answer. And that's not what I'm telling you. I found some stuff that worked. And I think it's actually what Jesus was teaching. But I don't know. You say, well, why are you up there then? I don't know. Except that it worked. There were results. It worked. It set me free. It set Caleb free. It's setting others free. It worked. But I'm telling you, don't buy into what I'm saying. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. You've heard me say this over and over. Don't buy into what I'm saying. Don't abandon what you already know. Build upon it. My grandfather laid a foundation in me of faith in Jesus Christ. And it's still there, baby. And I'm building on it. And I'm learning more and more about who He is and who I am and how I'm connected to God. Don't abandon what you know. But let what I'm saying, if it challenges you, if it conflicts with you in some way, let it sit down beside you and just stay there. It won't hurt you.
Feel it.
Let it be there. Let it challenge you. Because if nothing's challenging you, you're not growing. If nothing's coming in conflict with your faith, you don't know anything. You just think you do. I came here because I had questions. I came here, and I'm growing as an individual because it's messy. What is organic is messy. If you want a sterile environment where you go to a rehab and you spend 12 months completely isolated from people and drugs, and you think that's going to heal you, it doesn't work. The statistics don't show that that works. If you want to get in a sterile environment, that's fine. You can go 12 months without using anything. Because after all, they're testing you all the time. And you go into jail if they test you positive. But when you get out, you've got to go back to the dirt. You got to go back to planting stuff in the soil and getting your hands dirty. So why don't we just keep working in the soil? Why don't we just keep our hands dirty all the time? Working in the soil, making the soil work, waiting for the sunlight, the things we can't control, waiting for those things to happen. The farmer knows all he's got to do is focus his attention upon the seed in the soil. He cannot control the light and he can't control the rain. That's up to God. But if he puts his focus on the seed in the soil, he don't have to focus on the fruit. Just the seed in the soil, and the fruit will come of its own accord by God's grace.
Amen.
Y'all have a wonderful weekend. Now you know about Recover Wholeness.
I want to pray over everybody before you go. I pray that the Lord